A woman can be trained to be so good that she never learns how to protect her goodness from being consumed. She learns to serve, but not to ask whether the place she is serving is safe. She learns to forgive, but not to ask whether the other person is repentant. She learns to be pure, but not to ask whether the people around her are honorable. She learns to submit, but not to ask whether what is being asked of her is righteous. She learns to be quiet, but not to ask what her silence is protecting. And slowly, what was meant to be beautiful becomes dangerous. Because now, her niceness is predictable. Her politeness is exploitable. Her purity is romanticized. Her service is expected. Her silence is rewarded. And her discomfort is spiritualized away. This is how women become easy to use while still being praised as good women. People say, oh, she's so sweet, she's so humble, she has such a servant heart, she's such a good Christian woman. But what they may really mean is, she won't make this difficult, she won't question too much, she'll carry more than she should, she'll forgive quickly, she'll doubt herself before she doubts us, she'll try to be godly even when she is being mistreated. And that is where the pain begins, because many church girls were not only taught what to be, they were taught what not to be. Let me say something that may be difficult to hear, but it needs to be said. Sometimes church girl conditioning does not produce safety, it produces vulnerability, because a lot of women were taught how to be good without being taught how to be discerning. They were taught how to be nice, how to be pure, how to be available, how to serve, how to be soft, how to be respectful, how to be self-sacrificing, how to be spiritually polite. But they were not always taught how to recognize manipulation. They were not always taught how to detect. They were not always taught how to tell the difference between being loving and being easy to use. And that gap has cost many women dearly, because being good sounds beautiful until it becomes the very reason people know how to access you. When niceness is overdeveloped and discernment is underdeveloped, people notice. When your first instinct is to accommodate, to soften, to explain, to give grace, to avoid conflict, to stay humble, to keep the peace, people notice. Not everyone, of course, but exploiters notice. Entitled men notice. Manipulative leaders notice. Predatory systems notice, because what looks like virtue from the outside can become vulnerability in the hands of people who have no reverence for it. And that is one of the saddest things about church girl conditioning. A woman can be trained to be so good that she never learns how to protect her goodness from being consumed. She learns to serve, but not to ask whether the place she is serving is safe. She learns to forgive, but not to ask whether the other person is repentant. She learns to be pure, but not to ask whether the people around her are honorable. She learns to submit, but not to ask whether what is being asked of her is righteous. She learns to be quiet, but not to ask what her silence is protecting. And slowly, what was meant to be beautiful becomes dangerous, because now her niceness is predictable. Her politeness is exploitable. Her purity is romanticized. Her service is expected. Her silence is rewarded. And her discomfort is spiritualized away. This is how women become easy to use while still being praised as good women. People say, oh, she's so sweet, she's so humble, she has such a servant heart, she's such a good Christian woman. But what they may really mean is, she won't make this difficult, she won't question too much, she'll carry more than she should, she'll forgive quickly, she'll doubt herself before she doubts us, she'll try to be godly even when she is being mistreated. And that is where the pain begins, because many church girls were not only taught what to be, they were taught what not to be. Don't be loud, don't be difficult, don't be opinionated, don't be too schmexual, don't be too ambitious, don't be too assertive, don't be too angry, don't make people uncomfortable, don't dishonor authority, don't seem rebellious. And after enough years of hearing that, a woman can start mistaking self-erasure for holiness. She can start believing that her ability to endure discomfort quietly is proof of spiritual maturity. She can start believing that speaking up is carnality, that boundaries are pride, that caution is fear, that self-protection is rebellion. And when that happens, she becomes very easy to manipulate because she'll often fight herself before she fights what is harming her. That is the real danger. Not that she lacks goodness, but that her goodness has been disconnected from discernment. Not that she lacks love, but that her love has been severed from self-protection. Not that she lacks humility, but that humility has been taught to her in a way that keeps her small, dependent, and available to people who have not earned access to her life. And many women know exactly what that feels like. It feels like being the one who always understands, the one who always forgives, the one who always serves, the one who stays later, the one who gives more, the one who doubts herself first, the one who carries what other people should be carrying themselves. And from the outside, it looks righteous, but inside she is tired. Inside she is confused. Inside she is wondering why being good keeps leading her into situations where she is depleted, overlooked, unheard, and overused. And that question matters because some of you were not protected by your goodness. You were exposed by it. Not because goodness is bad, but because goodness without discernment is unguarded treasure. And unguarded treasure attracts thieves. Please hear that clearly. The issue is not that you were too good. The issue is that nobody taught you that your goodness needed gates, that your service needed wisdom, that your softness needed protection, that your purity needed perception, that your kindness needed standards. Because without those things, virtue stops functioning as virtue. It starts functioning as access. And that is how church girl conditioning can become a trap. A woman learns how to be chosen by systems, praised by communities, approved by leaders, admired by men. But she does not always learn how to ask the most important question. Is this safe for me? Not, is this impressive? Not, is this biblical language? Not, will people approve? Not, does this make me look godly? Is this safe? Does this honor my humanity? Does this respect my boundaries? Does this allow my conscience to stay awake? Does this require me to betray what I know? Does this feel what I feel or what God is showing me? Because a woman can be deeply biblical and still be deeply unprotected if she has only been taught how to be pleasing. And some of you are waking up to that now. You are realizing that spiritual politeness made you easier to override, that niceness made you easier to guilt, that purity language made you easier to shame, that service made you easier to overwork, that silence made you easier to control. And maybe the hardest part is you thought these qualities would keep you safe. You thought being good would protect you. You thought being a good Christian woman would cause people to treat you with honor. But goodness does not stop exploitation when exploitation knows how to speak Christian. This is why this conversation matters, because women need to know that discernment is not the enemy of virtue. Discernment is what protects virtue from being vulnerable. Discernment is what keeps kindness from becoming access. Discernment is what keeps service from being servitude. Discernment is what keeps humility from becoming humiliation. Discernment is what keeps love from becoming self-abandonment. And some of you do not need to become less soft. You need to become harder to use. You do not need to become less loving. You need to become more discerning. You do not need to abandon your values. You need to stop letting your values be used against you. Because being good was never supposed to mean being easy to exploit. It was never supposed to mean being endlessly available to what drains you. It was never supposed to mean staying silent while people use your character to keep you compliant. And maybe this is where healing begins. Not with becoming cold, not with becoming cynical, but with learning that goodness and wisdom were always meant to travel together. That Jesus did not call women to be easy prey. That God did not give you a spirit you were supposed to silence in order to remain nice. That your ability to perceive danger, dishonor, manipulation, and misuse is not a threat to your faith. It is part of your protection. So if you've ever felt like your church girl conditioning made you easier to use, hear me clearly. You are not imagining it. You are not bitter for noticing it. You are not worldly for naming it. You are simply waking up to the difference between virtue that is alive and virtue that has been stripped of self-protection, and that difference can change your whole life. This is Redefine Your Narrative. And maybe the narrative you need to redefine is this: being a good woman was never supposed to make me easier to use. It was supposed to protect me. It was supposed to be protected by wisdom. Thank you for listening. God bless you.